All right, so now we could use the table. We could use all the percentiles in the table to figure out what percent of population is either above or below specific z-score. So for example, this is slide 8 in the 7.2 file. What percent of the population is below or to the left of a z-score of 0.28? So suppose you found out that your z-score for a certain thing is 0.28. What percent of the population scored below you or to the left of you? Below and to the left are basically synonymous of one another. They mean the same thing. So basically just look up the 0.28 in the table, the z table. So you would go down to 0.2 over here and then go over to 0.08 along the top. That represents a z-score of 0.28. So you figure out where they cross each other, and it's right there, right? 0.6103. That's a z-score of 0.28. So if you scored a z-score of 0.28 on your SATs or whatever standardized tests, your percentile would be 0.6103 or 61.03rd percentile. That represents you scoring in the 61st percentile, which means 61% of the population scored either equal to or below you. Now, we could ask that same question, but just phrase it or frame it in a different way. What percent of the population basically scored above that z-score or to the right of that z-score? And all you do is basically, if 61% scored below that z-score, then just subtract that from 100, and then that's the percentage of the population that scored above or to the right of that z-score. So you would just do 1 minus 0.6103, which is going to be around 0.39. It's going to be like 0.3897, which is the 38th.97th percentile. Okay, and those two numbers should add up to 100% because you're looking at the percentage of the population that scored below a certain value and then the percentage of population that scored above that same value. So that's basically the entire population. It's 100% of the population when you add those two together and combine them. Okay? Now, a little tougher, what if you have a negative z-score? A negative z-score, look, so negative 0.107 above and below. Right? So negative z-scores are a little trickier to deal with in the table. Remember, from the last video, you basically had to look up the positive z-score and subtract it from 1. So we have to look up positive 1.07. We have to look up a z-score of positive 1.07. All right? And then do 1 minus it. That'll give us the negative z-score. So 1.07, we got to go down to 1.0 over here, and then 0.07 along the top. Figure out where they cross each other, which would be right here in the table. So a positive z-score of 1.07 is a 0.8577, or the 85th 0.77th percentile. Okay, so that's for a positive z-score of 1.07. So we want to know what the negative z-score of 1.07 is. Remember, negative z-scores mean you're below average. So we have to do 1 minus that number. And that's going to be 0.14-ish. So that's the percentage of the population that's below or to the left of the negative z-score of 1.07. So that's going to be 0.1423. Okay. Or the 14th.23rd percentile. And then the last question, basically, just do the same thing we did above with these first two right here. Remember, if we wanted to find the percentage above that same z-score, you just take your previous answer and subtract it from 1. So we're going to basically do 1 minus 0.1423, which actually gets us right back to the same value, 0.8577. All right. So that's how you deal with above and below of both positive and negative z-scores.